listening to the Tricorder transmissions. Or leave. Episode 21.
Just what the doctor ordered. Right, doctor? I couldn't have prescribed better.
You have once again beamed aboard for another episode of Shore Leave, your Star Trek convention community podcast. I am Jeff Hewlett, and at the time of this recording, we are about 3 months or so away from the 2017 Star Trek Las Vegas convention. And here with me is someone who has been counting down those days and weeks even more anxiously than I have, and that would be my spectacular co-host, Miss Heather Barker.
Yes, it's actually 99 days.
Oh, so just a smidge over 3 months.
I'm wrong. It's 98 because I forgot it's Tuesday and not Monday. So it's even closer.
Wow. That is getting very, very close. I know we're all getting very excited about that. And as this is our 21st episode, and as we always do here on Shore Leave, as STLV starts to loom ever closer, we begin to bring on some guests who will be hosting events or have tables in the vendor's room in Las Vegas. And here tonight on this episode is someone who will be doing both of those things. He should be familiar to all of you out there in listener land. He is author, editor, interviewer, producer, and many, many other things. Dr. Trek himself, Mr. Larry Nemecek. Welcome back for your third appearance on Shore Leave.
Wow. 3. Thank you, guys. Heather, when you were trickling off those numbers, I kept wanting to say, now, how do you know that so exactly?
Technology.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I don't see no points on your ears, girl.
It's funny you asked that, Larry, because we actually had a question. I think it was early this morning on the unofficial Facebook group. Someone was asking for an app, a smartphone app that would help you count down the days until a certain event. So if you go over to the Facebook group, if you're looking for an app like that yourself, head over to that unofficial Facebook group. There's a thread there with a couple of links in it. So some really good stuff out there to help you count down the days to STLV, just like we're all doing.
They could call it T-.
Yeah. So before we jump into our discussion here with Larry about his upcoming GeekNation tour and other things, we have some business that we have to conduct. We have promised that we're going to announce the winner of our $20 ShopLLAP gift card here on the show tonight, and we have the list of people who submitted their iTunes reviews ready to go, and I've got all the names in an Excel spreadsheet here with a random sort filter on them. So all I need, Heather, for you to do is to pick, are we going to go with the highest number or the lowest number as the winner?
Let's go for the highest number.
Okay, and here we go. I'm pressing the magic randomizer button, and the highest number is, it's Yesenia. So Yesenia Hernandez, yes, you have won the $20 ShopLLAP gift card. So congratulations. Thank you for leaving your iTunes review, and thank you to everyone else who left one as well. Very kind of you all. We loved hearing back from everybody. So we'll probably be doing another one of these contests again in the very near future, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. And Yesenia, we will get in touch with you after this episode goes live to coordinate the mailing or emailing of that gift card to you. So congratulations.
Yay!
All right. So Larry
Awesome.
is here tonight primarily to talk about his upcoming GeekNation tour, the Captain Kirk Memorial Valley of Fire one-day tour that is departing on August 1st, 2017 from the Rio Hotel itself. So the day before the convention starts. Larry, you want to give us some details about that?
Yes, and thanks again. And I don't want to give anybody a heart attack. We have the big, Terrace Cassidy's GeekNation Tours company does all kinds of geek niche tours. They do history, they do military, they do cons, they go to Gen Con and Comic Cons and all that. But he 3 times now, we've done every other year. We've done the big week before the Vegas tour film site tour in LA and then last time for the 50th, we added some sites in San Francisco. And when we don't have the big tour, which works out to be the odd numbered years like this year, we do a one-day tour from people who are just coming into Vegas. they get there a day early, we get out nice and early because it is August and it is the desert, and go out to the Valley of Fire State Park, where they shot all the scenes of from Generations. I call it the Kirk Memorial Tour because it's where Kirk died, you know. So it's kind of the handy. I mean, the first time we did the big tour, we thought about that, and I said, but it's the other side of Vegas, and we're starting from LA. And then after 1 year, we went, well, that's dumb. It's an hour. We just get up and go there and come back. So we save it for the last day. So since then, we've done it. We've either done it as the last day of the big tour, and people can jump in standalone, or we do it as a standalone, just a 1 day. But either way, you can get people can get a taste of what touring with Terrace and me is like. But what's amazing out there is that every time we've gone, the locals keep coming up with something new Trekish that's not like in the guidebooks or that nobody knew about. So we have the official stuff, and then we have these wacky Star Trek, you know, like, oh, that's kind of shaped like a Odo head kind of formation.
Great.
The natural history people are going to hate us because we're going to overtake everything. You know, eventually it won't be. Oh, that doesn't look like a Roadrunner. That looks like a something Trekish.
That's the way it has to be.
Yeah. So, are there any Trek related guests that will be coming along on this tour that people might want to know about?
Well, since it's the Valley of Fire, and it's primarily, this trip is partly primary on paper anyway. It's primarily focused on Generations, that's where they shot all the Viridian 3 scenes. And you know, the only cast that was out there was Shatner and Patrick and Malcolm McDowell and a very small crew. And one person who's always promised to go with us and then never has been able to because of his show commitments now is Michael Westmore.
Oh, wow.
You know,
cool.
He did it, and he has some great stories from then, some of which he's told or some he's shared with me and I've shared. But every year we intend to, and every year Face Off, you know, on Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
After the first couple of years, he's been like a regular with it with Mackenzie. They, for some reason, and they, you know, we've threatened a lawsuit. No, they filmed their finale for their half seasons, you know, that week. Like, that's why he's never at Vegas at STLV until Friday.
Yeah.
You know, he rolls in. They leave after filming Friday night, he and Marion, and they get there for Saturday. He never does anything at Vegas until it's Saturday so far. Every year we say we hope he'll be with us. And he's agreed to if the schedule happens to, you know, I keep hoping there'll be a lapse some year where things will shift a week or something. But
yeah.
So no, normally it's like with the big tour, I have a lot of material from the shoot. We have a lot of forensic stuff from that the way it was set up, because it was a huge thing out there. It was in the heat, and they built all these bridges and ladders and all this metal work, and we can recreate that pretty well. What's fun is that we found out the first time we went, like a month before, that there was another Star Trek interest place out there. And if you go to the Facebook page for Geek Nation or the 50th anniversary tour, you can see one of the bridges that they used, one of the killer bridges, not that bridge, but the other kind of bridge that they used. They didn't bang it up. They didn't want to haul it back to LA, and they basically donated it to the park. And they took it and they've used it. And so now one of the bridges built for the Generations filming is spanning a dry creek. And so we always go over there and take pictures of the killer bridge, and some people cosplay, you know, Soran and Kirk and all that. And we have fun over there too. So it's almost like it's a bonus. And then I swear to God, every time we go, they keep coming. Oh, have you seen Enterprise Rock? I'm like, what? Have you seen? Well, last time we were looking at Enterprise Rock, and I decided we found a Voyager Rock, and anyway, I still think I've talked about it. I found Odo's head real near Voyager Rock, so who knows what will happen this year? But in 1 year, the guys that were there, we were looking for. There's a scene in Generations where Picard climbs through that little hole in the rock, you know, when he's trying to get around the force field, and one of the local guides that's in the company we use said. You know that scene where he says that we know where that was. It's not the same place, but I can take you right to it. And we're like, okay. So an hour of a boondoggle later, you know, wild bull chase or something. So we started kidding about, well, we're looking for Picard's hole. We're looking for Picard's hole, which, you know, kind of descended from there. But So you never know what's going to happen. So that's why it's fun. But this is just the short one day. I say that it's like we leave at 7 and get back at 2. So that's like 7 hours.
Yeah.
You know? But we leave early because again, it's August and
it's really hot.
Vegas, yeah. But you're back in time for your fun Tuesday night, to recover and get out for Tuesday night for con Eve.
Yeah. Nothing really. Yeah, everything happens, I guess, Tuesday night now. I think that for gold, I think the earliest registration. Well, last year they opened it earlier. Like normally, I think it's like 5, and then I feel like last year they did the registration somewhere midday. But so I think you'll be back like right in time that you can take a shower and because you probably want one. And then go hop in line if you're gold or your captain's chair. So yeah, perfect timing.
Right. Yeah, it's why it's worked out that way really well. And the other thing is, when we're out there, the park has a natural history museum. So we've kind of gotten it, and you have a lunch provided when you're doing the price. So we've kind of gotten a good thing down when we go out and go early, and then we come back and we do, as we're crisscrossing the park, then we go in and do the nature center and kind of recuperate there, and people can soak up a little non-trek if they'd like to, because there's prehistoric animals and there's natural history from some of the early tribes that were here and that were there, and the rocks are amazing and beautiful.
Yeah. And
so we cool off, and then we make another dip out, and then we come back. Then we go on. Then there's a picnic shelter that we usually have lunch at. So we have it pretty well. We haven't lost anybody yet.
So is it pretty easy walking, or is it more like hiking?
Oh no, it's easy walking. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's never more than a few hundred, a couple of 100-yard.
Okay.
Perfect. The wackiest, the hardest walk isn't even, and there's no uphill.
Okay.
And it's fairly even. It's all fairly even ground. The one we got into a little bit, but it's still nothing. Is it's like loose sand when we stop and we go look at Enterprise Rock and now Voyager Rock and Odo Rock. There's like a trail for a while and then it just goes to sand. So it's like 8 inches of sand that you're walking in for 50 yards or something. But that's about as strenuous.
Definitely wear some good shoes. But otherwise,
but no, we're not. No hardcore. We're not.
Not like hiking the volcano in Hawaii, which I did in December. So.
No, we're not going to the steps of Mount Salea or anything.
and be careful about your cosplay choices as well. Being out in that kind of heat, it can get pretty brutal. I've been through Valley of Fire a couple times, and it gets it's total exposure out there. Sun beating on you. So
no, I was just say we have on the big tour. We do this all the time because people want to cosplay at Starfleet Academy and headquarters or whatever, and people bring their cosplay with them. And they change real quick and go out and do their pictures, and then they get out,
Yeah.
And I should say too that the max on the tour this day tour is, I think it's 18. So it's either 18 or 20. So
I think 20 is what's on the website.
Oh, you can't trust that? No.
I just pulled it up to look at everything. I was going nuts on Creation site because you've always been listed on the Creation site, and I cannot.
We're not there.
I thought I thought that you were, and I think possibly it might have gotten bumped off with all just the stuff they've been adding.
They've rejiggered the site this year. I'll ask Terrace about that because I thought we were, but maybe because it's just the one day this year, not the huge big tour. But
you should still be on there.
Yeah. GeekNation tours. If you come to, my blog at LarryNemecek.com or TreklandBlog.com, I've done a story for it. But I can send you. I'll give you guys a link, and you can put it up. Either the page and or my story about it will have a link to it. So
it's really easy to find.
It is, I got there through GeekNationTours.com and LarryNemecek.com, so it was pretty easy to find going to either one of those. So,
and there's a super easy button that says "Book Now," which I really want to click, but I'm poor, so.
Well, the tax refund, right? Your tax refund's coming.
Oh no, I own a business. I had to pay out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's already
I'm gonna save my pennies, but no, hopefully we will get your list full after this podcast is released.
Yeah. Well, I have something, Larry, that will help get your list full. By the way, I have
Okay.
a lovely testimonial that has been recorded by Miss Bonnie Moss, who attended one of your Geek
Yes.
Nation tours last year. So I'm gonna play that for the listeners here and let them hear from an actual patron what your tour is actually like and how much fun it is.
Yes, thank you. It was fabulous. I went with a super group of people from the Rio Hotel, which was very convenient. Made a lot of new friends during the tour. The Valley of Fire is unlike any other place you may go to. Just the rock formations and the coloration and the terrain is excellent. And then to have the commentary with Larry Nemecek as to what was filmed where, and the Kirk's final resting place, and the battle with Soren and Picard and Kirk. All of these things, locations are still there. He fleshes it out. Bring comfortable shoes and a hat. It can get a little toasty, but worth your time and worth every penny. I highly recommend it.
Oh, that Bonnie. You know, she's a big Spock fan, as you all know by now.
yeah.
And
Yes.
Vulcan fans never bluff. So
That's true. Bonnie was such a joy to have on the show. So she was kind enough to record that for you as a little bit of a surprise. So it really nice to hear about how much fun it is to go on this tour, and I'm looking forward to hearing their stories.
well, and again, it's a day taste of what the bigger tour is, and we'll have the big full tour next year again in 2018. I don't know if we're going to have San Francisco again as an offering. It was a big thing for the 50th. We'll just have to see how it goes and what the mood of everybody is by then. But we may well do that. But it's what's weird is even in the not weird. What's cool is even on the 1-day trip. Well, it's weird if you're a pessimist, I guess. Great if you're an optimist. But even on the 1-day tour, I remember last time we did this 2 years ago, and it was just quote unquote, the 1-day tour. We hadn't done the big one.
Mm-hmm.
We just came into Vegas a day early. And I was sitting in one of the seats in the van, in the big van we have, minibus, I guess. And I had two fans sitting talking to me in front of me. One was from Indonesia. One was from Malaysia.
Oh.
So yes, they're international fans, and of course their English is perfect, and they're from Southeast Asia, the island and peninsulas down there between Asia and Australia, and they were both fans. They both had their clubs back home, and not only am I sitting here talking to somebody from both of them, but they're both sitting there like they're much closer to each other than I am to either one of them. They're just across the Strait of Sumatra or whatever, but whatever it is, but. It was just cool. They're just sitting there talking about what they did. Oh, we had our last meeting. We watched blah, blah, and it just hits it again. How, global and universal Star Trek is, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a sanity break, but also what is cool about things like our tour and Vegas and conventions and fandom is that you never know who you're going to meet or where they're going to be from.
Yep.
And how, whether it's around the country, it's around the world, how you realize again that we all have more. There's way more. We have more in common.
Yeah.
Gene would have loved to say that we have more in common than there is that divides us.
Yep.
So anyway, that was just a moment that I'll always that and some of the wackier things that happened, but I'll always remember that. And it's the tours. I know we say this on the big tour. It's great because Terrace is from Canada and he has a lot of international people, and we have a lot of international fans. A lot of them came last year, for the 50th. It was a pilgrimage. But a lot of people come to the United States for the first time to come to Vegas, right? Star Trek convention. And it can be scary and daunting, even though they're, great little adventurers. And we always say the tour, if you're doing it ahead of time, is a great way to not only get over the hump of being here for the first time, because you're in good hands with Tribbles, Captain, but you're meeting people already. You don't walk in the door stranger. Not that I think most people, when they walk in the Rio for the first time, if they're a stranger, they don't stay that way 24 hours later.
Yeah.
After they've stood in line or they're sitting in their seat for a few hours, nobody's a stranger, especially in Trekland. But the tour is always a great way to knock that down. So
Yeah, absolutely.
all these cool little spin-offs that have happened out of it too that are people talk about, and it's just like
I think that Bonnie and Stephen Oh, we're talking on our Tricorder page and you, Larry. I think you chimed in because the two of them
Yeah.
met on the tour and everyone was chatting. So yeah, that's a really great point, is that if it's the first time that you're coming, and even if not, you make instant friends and you're going to see those people for the rest of the week. So it's a really good opportunity to have fun and meet people. So good point.
And again, the one day is always there, but on the odd numbered years, the one day is all we're doing. So it's kind of fun to do. So yeah, so people are getting aboard now, and again, it's a limit of 20. So if you're thinking about it, and again, there's been so much now. I got in. I forget who I was getting into it with. Not getting into it, but somebody was talking about con creep, meaning some young lady was talking about con creep as in that guy that comes up and bugs you and doesn't know, whatever.
I know.
And I was saying, oh, let's not. But I was saying, oh, now wait a minute. Let's not appropriate this term, because I started saying con creep years ago when like the Monday after pool party happened, and then when we started adding things the day before, and then now
right.
I was using con creep as in the calendar is creeping on each end, outward.
Yeah.
So let's come up with another name for the creepy con creep. your whatever, your adjective of choice, your douchey adjective of choice. But con douche, that sounds fun to me, maybe.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That time when you don't want the con douche spirit, right? Okay.
Yeah, con creep does fit the spreading of the schedule, because I see every year now, I see people who are getting there, even almost a week ahead of time, and they're posting pictures of the empty masquerade bar, and people who stay for 3, 4, 5 days after the con is over, and
3 weeks later, I finally cut my band. Yeah. The ones who. I finally got my band. Yeah, I love the Facebook pictures now. It's like, it's like July 10th. I'm here. Where are you all?
Yeah.
Like, what? 3 weeks, 4 weeks ahead? But that's what it's turned into. It feels like it. That's what it's turned.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's amazing how every so many, the years are, speaking of creeping, the years are creeping by. And it's amazing how about the time I think, oh, I'm watching changes in Vegas. Then a few more years go by and it was like, oh, here's another few waves of, it's like what's going on in the world, what's going on in Trek, what's going on in convention scene in general. And it just since I started my blog in 2008, like right after that, because we talk about this kind of in a way, the Vegas Con started in 2001 and the first one wasn't even creation. It was Slanted Fedora, and it was meant to be what was the anniversary in 2001? The 35th, I guess. Yeah, 35th. And it was like 2 days later, 9/11 happened, and all the foreign people were trapped, and fans couldn't fly home.
Man,
it was kind of wild, but because it was on the anniversary weekend, it was on the September 8th, 9th, 10th weekend. So, September 8th, 9th, 10th, 2001 wasn't fun the way it wound up. But then they implode. That company fell apart, imploded, and Creation jumped in, and they'd already decided to like jump them a month and be in August. And things are cheaper in August. And that's why it's always been in August ever since.
Right.
They never made a move to go, And the first one wasn't at the Hilton or the old Experience site. It was at a low hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And, Creation went to the Hilton at the time for the Experience and then obviously moved away. They gave it a couple of years and then moved away when the Experience started. But it's been fun to watch how it's evolved. And then before Vegas, it took people 3 years to realize, it'd be a good thing to do a convention in Vegas with the Experience there, because the Pasadena Grand Slams used to be
they were the big one.
Right, the pinnacle of Trek conventions, at least traditionally. Yeah. So anyway, it's like every 4 or 5 years, there's this new generation of complexity or something's happened, and
new fans, new movies, new fans, and now a new series.
Oh well, the 09, yeah.
Because that was my first creation was 2009. After the JJ movies, I just got super pumped, and it's like, oh, we're in Denver, we could just fly down to Vegas, and
Had
thus
you done
it all began.
Before?
Yeah, but I had mostly focused on
like Starfest and StarCon there in Denver.
Well, I started going to MegaCon down in Florida. I used to manage a comic book store. So I was very focused on the comic book world down there, and that's really what most of the cons were. It was the comic book genre, and then like popular TV. I don't even remember like the first MegaCon I went to if there were Star Trek people or not.
Mhm.
And we did go to Starfest. I think it was that same year or the year after, and it has grown a lot. It was just this past weekend, and I didn't get to go, but it was a little too small. It's a fan run convention, and they had an Nana visitor, Renee Auberjonois, Walter Koenig. I think were the three Star Trek
Mhm.
people. So it's people that I see on every year at STLV.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so it's just a little small. And Denver Comic Con I went to last year, and it's too big. It's huge. It's great. It's only this will be the fourth year, and it had some phenomenal number of people because
Yeah.
there's not a lot here in Colorado. We do have a lot of very small, like there's a Colorado Springs Comic Con, and some other little
Mhm.
itty bitty ones, but Denver Comic Con attracts people just from all the outlying states as well. So we had Will Wheaton, he never goes to STLV.
Mhm.
So we had him and some Carl Urban, I think. But yeah, but STLV is the con for me. I went the first year, 2009, and
This
I
sounds like
was
a
hooked.
musical.
Yeah,
STLV, it's the
the
con
con
for
for
me.
me.
Yeah.
I could write that musical. It's just and we talk about this in the groups, but it's because number one, it's Star Trek focused, and uh, reality for me is that I'm just much more immersed in the Star Trek world than I am comic book world anymore. So I like just being immersed in Star Trek. I like the mostly adult vibe in
Uh-huh.
Vegas. Not that I don't like kids or young people. I do. I like being in more of an adult, mature
They're our
crowd.
future.
They are. And I
The
think,
future of
creation,
fandom is with them. Yeah.
yes, creation could do a little bit more for families because there's really nothing there for families. But and that's where my friends are. So it's family reunion, which is
Oh,
we talk
sure.
about
Yeah.
all the time, and seeing you guys and just seeing everyone, and that's really why I go anymore, is just to see all my friends.
Well,
So
see,
yeah,
it's something that sparked was when you were talking about going to Starfest, but the only three Trek people were Nana and Renee and
yeah,
Walter.
yeah,
I mean, Starfest started as a Trek con
it
only. I
did.
mean, it was the first. Did you know it was the first convention that Patrick Stewart was at?
Wow. Actually, yes, I did know that. I
I was
just forgot.
there because that was the closest all Trek, real Trek convention.
Yeah,
What's funny is with the Comic Cons, blowing up and becoming this national mainstream, thing for good and bad. I mean, there were always Comic Cons, but it was, my stereotype here, as bad as we do this with, I yell about people in Trek, was like the old comic guys going and just thumbing through the boxes of comics
yeah,
in bags, and that was a
yeah,
Comic Con to me.
yeah.
And I wasn't a comics guy, so I didn't care about going. And then when Hollywood got involved and it became the mutual love affair in San Diego, and then the whole idea took off and everybody exploded. That's just been about 10 years ago.
Yeah,
And so like Starfest has survived, and a lot of the old, I mean, it was either things were a sci-fi lit con or they were a Trek con, Trek
mhm,
slash media, and
yeah,
eventually there was other media besides Trek, and then Trek had its fallow time, and if they wanted to keep going that way, they had to have other genres
they
and
had to branch
franchises.
out.
So,
Yeah. It's
but anyway,
wildly successful. I mean, Starfest, like it's still going strong, and um they've got 3 days of all Starfest, and I watch the reports of everybody that goes, and they love it. So again, like we've talked about in the past, the difference between these fan run conventions and the company run conventions. And like on Friday night of Starfest, you do have to buy an extra ticket, or you have to have a certain tier ticket, but you basically are in a room, all of the guests are there, and they go from table to table and just sit down and talk with you.
mhm.
And one of my girlfriends went, and when Walter Koenig went up on stage to do his panel, he actually he actually called out for all the people at table 9 to stand up because they had just been such wonderful company. And so my friends, stood up and waved, which was
Yep.
just really sweet. I mean, Walter's just the best that way, but it's a much more intimate experience than Vegas is, unless you buy like one of the extra experience tickets that they don't really do anymore. They used to do the breakfasts and the lunch, and they've stopped doing those tickets. So I think the closest thing you're going to get to that now is like the DS9 documentary crowdfund campaign sold a few different tickets for some kind of like meet and greet or whatnot with the DS9 people. So I think that's really like the best you get, aside from chatting with people that are available in the vendor's room.
Right. Or did they do some small events like in the wannabe Quark's bar has gotten incrementally better every year about having a point and not feeling like a sad shadow of trying to be the old Quark's bar. It's the last couple of years, it's actually gotten up there and they've had events and it's actually been packed for some things. And the Roddenberry stage is in there.
Yeah, that
I'm
helps.
hoping they bring that back. I am waiting with bated breath to hear that Roddenberry stage is coming back, because that really took the Quark space to another level.
Yep.
I think everyone loved it. I know there was some issue with like the bands over, like karaoke and the Roddenberry's band overlapping or something, but I think everyone agrees that was a great addition to the convention. So as soon as I hear that we're going to have it, I'm going to let everybody know.
And then you, yes, and I will too. And and then of course the capper is if you're just out at Masquerade Bar with some of the actors when they're on their way in the door or they're on their way out the door, and they just want to they just want to slink out, but they don't mind slinking if there's like 5 or 10 people there that if it's the middle of the day, they don't want a mob. But
I hear pretty frequently from, we've had different guests that have told their stories about little run-ins with so-and-so. I think it's really like the big names. You're probably not going to run into, Patrick Stewart, of course, anywhere in the convention space, just hanging out.
If Patrick is hanging out at the Masquerade Bar, just get me a picture. That's all I want.
Yeah, but I know, I think Jonathan Frakes has hung out at the bars before. Oh gosh, I can't remember. I think Connor and Dominic, we hung out. We had Nicole DeBoer.
Oh, sure.
I can't say her name. DeBoer was at iBar. So there's definitely that opportunity at STOV.
JG and Bob, you might see.
Yeah, they're around. I love when they do the karaoke too. Best thing.
Yeah, but I'm talking about just like I said, on their way in or on their way out, or I just got in and or whatever. John Billingsley and Bonnie.
Yeah.
Kind of hang, but there's that whole And of course, nobody wants to be a crowd magnet and have a mob show up, but you just never know. So, especially if it's the odd hours, middle of the afternoon or early morning, or
waiting in line to get a coffee. And there's my friend, that just happened at Starfest, where my friend was in line to get a coffee and Renee was there, just chatting with Renee and getting coffee.
Yes, we are all Starbuckers.
Heather and Claire and I were waiting at Starbucks once, and Walter walked up the long Starbucks line, and the sea parted, and they let him through.
Oh, there you go. Well, that was nice. That was nice.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting how when I was like a year or two after starting my site and trying to be modern, entrepreneurial, that I noticed I had just started going to Comic-Con with friends who had been going for ages, and it was interesting. I wrote this, and I had one guy write and said, "Oh, this is the best blog thing I ever read," because all I was talking about was the Comic-Conification of Vegas. And it first started happening cosplay is such a funny word anyway, because people. When I first heard that, I was like, "Oh, you mean like going in costume?
Yeah,
like it's a new concept." I'm sorry if I didn't have the frou-frou word for it. Rude. But then I went, as I realized that kind of came out of anime, right? And anime tradition. And I went, oh, well, it's not just wearing a costume, because it's what is it? It's cause for costuming and play for role playing.
Yeah.
So silly me, my first thing was they're role playing they're not just wearing a costume, they're role playing the character all day long. That's what makes it different. Right. And then after a year or two, I'm like, you're not role playing. You're just wearing the costume.
Yeah.
Like, cosplay. Where's the play? Who put the play in cosplay, or who took it out? So there's times I want to go, excuse me. It's just like women in fandom. And this is one of my soapbox. This is one of the things I hope I can punch up a little bit in the Con of Wrath when we do get our documentary finished. Is this whole thing about the geek girl revolution and the fan girl revolution and all that? It's like. No, women built Star Trek fandom. Yes, Spock and Vulcan and fanzines.
Yes.
And then the cons. when the Shatner Get a Life sketch was on Saturday Night Live, like that was like 86 or something. And I remember watching it live and going, what are all those young boys in t-shirts in the audience? Where's all the middle-aged women? That's the real, I'm by then middle-aged. So anyway, this whole thing about so I love having pictures from the 70s and the 80s of all the girls and young women running around in everything from like Vulcan matriarchs to, Mirror Universe Uhura and, Moreau cut off midriffs to, everything.
Yeah.
And guys did not into this. Anyway, that's what's funny about the whole arc of conventions has been interesting. But I will say, I'll argue this in anybody's face. One day I wrote something on this one time, going backwards. All the big, even though like you were saying, like you could barely find Star Trek at a Comic-Con the last few years, which we hopefully will do something about. Maybe my little secret hope is that Discovery will surprise everybody and not just be good and be a hit, but be like this breakout mega hit, and all the 15-year-olds next year at all the Comic-Cons will be running around, dressed as Sinequa's character or whatever.
Yeah.
It didn't happen with Jayla, but a series might be repetitious enough in people's face enough that it will start imprinting.
I hope so.
But that would be cool. But other than that, Star Trek started all this. It's just, that's one of the things I like to try to do with preserving and archiving things is, like I mentioned about women, is reminding people and everybody who's just hit fandom and conventions now that in a gentle way, you should go back and you should watch some Star Trek, and you should also know like what Star Trek did for all of your favorite, all you people watching your DC series now, and loving it. But we live in this world where everybody who has a halfway genre connected show or a a police show where one of the leads used to be in a genre show, and so now they're Comic-Con material because Nathan Fillion used to be in Firefly.
Yeah.
But it's like go back and figure out why this all happened. It's Star Trek.
Yeah, it's important. And as a woman, I appreciate you bringing up the history of women in conventions, because it really, I didn't even know about it until I, really got into Star Trek and going to the conventions and started learning. And I feel like that discussion has really only come up recently in the past couple years, and especially with the 50th and like the Women in Star Trek panel that they do every year. Last year, Bijo Trimble was on there, and we've been talking with her to get her on the podcast to talk a little bit about
I hope she does. Yeah.
Days of Yore with her. We just got to get her Skype set up. But but it was really great having her. And I reached out and I asked her if they were going to be there this year. And of course, Creation hasn't asked them. Which disappoints me because she wants to go, and I think they should be a staple at Star Trek conventions.
Yes. Well, and especially the folks from the first from the original series and the first generation era people.
Yeah.
Because when I had Communicator magazine, the official fan club's magazine, and when we really got it ramped up and going before the world blew up in 2005 on about 3 levels, but the Trek world anyway. But we started, even then, what's that been, 15 years ago, we started doing a series that I called First Person Fandom, because First Fandom is what they called the fans who were at the first Worldcon in the 30s.
Right.
It was kind of a term that was applied. So I gave it a twist for Trek and called it First Person Fandom for the people who were there at the beginning of Trek fandom. And there's still a lot of them there, but like I would love to have the people who was left, who did the first New York convention in 73. And I talked to a couple of them occasionally, but the big leading lights. And again, they're 3/4 women, but like you mentioned Bijo. So like Joni Winston, who wrote, and she's passed. And Shirley Mayuski, who was the head of the Star Trek Well Committee for years and years and years after, and some of the zine editors and people, but we did get 3 done of this series, and we did get Joan Winston interviewed. We did get Shirley Mayuski interviewed, and who was the other one? We did 3, but they were all just I wasn't trying to get women, but the women were the early people who did the structure and the pillars of Trek fandom.
Yeah.
And we did get them, and they all passed away within, like a year or 2 or 3 after that. Not Bijo, but a few right after that. And it's like, get those stories recorded and get them. It's like when I got 2 or 3 years, I got Bob Justman to come to Pasadena and then to Vegas, and said, guys, you need to have him here. People, the newer fans need to hear these guys first person,
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at like Stan Lee. Stan Lee is everywhere. And I mean, he's such a prominent, of course he's a prominent figure, but these people are as important to Star Trek, in my opinion anyway. And it's just that panel would fill a room, in my opinion, having all the people who have, were responsible for saving Star Trek, because it was the fans. I mean, Star Trek is here because of fans. And I was just so thrilled to have Bijo up there last year and get to listen to her. And then I've listened to various podcasts she's been on as well. It would be amazing if Dorothy Fontana was there. It's just really sad how somewhere in the history of conventions, women have just been forgotten. To the point that we're thinking it's a revolution, that women are going again.
Well, that's been my soapbox for a few years, because I thought the first time I heard that, and again, you can't knock people who don't know, but that's part of the challenge of having so many young. That's the way people for 10 years in fandom, and especially in corporate Star Trek, were like wringing their hands about, we're going to lose our younger demographic, and is Star Trek fandom just going to age out of existence? And aside from the kids being raised by fans, we're not going to, all the gamer kids, and is anybody under 30 watching Star? All of that, and the JJ movies did bring a ton of people in. I do remember that 2009, and I'm hoping that Discovery will do the same thing. And just being socially media out there, and so many like you guys, and all the podcasting that's going on, and all the new way, memes, and all the fan films, and people doing a movie at their laptop, and all the clever, all the mashups and all the goofy video stuff, because that's where people live now. That's doing a ton of good. And then being the Blu-rays and the Netflix and streaming access has been huge.
Yeah.
So all that's good, but still, people don't know, and not that this is like, this is a class and you have to pass all the tests, but it just heightens your awareness. And part of this is even corporate, because you're talking about the fans brought it back. I think Star Trek, more than any other, that's why it's ironic to me, and why we have to do our parts here, that in a time when Star Trek is in a fallow time and trying to get back to where it was, and maybe a year from now it'll have exploded again, who knows? But when it's in a fallower time, at the same time as all the Marvel, DC, superhero, and Star Wars now, and they're all at a zenith point. Yeah. That the people who are coming in that don't know. I don't want to say Star Trek's proud history, like it's the British Empire and it'll never come back. But but I mean, having that there, and why so much of that, and not just for it's historical trivia, but why Star Trek is also different than everything else. Yes. And I think one of that is nothing else. There's not a DNA of ownership in the fandom with almost anything else the way it is with Star Trek. Even, like Star Wars fans are, and comic book fans can get anal and argue and do canon and trivia just like Trek people can. No one ever argued that comic book fans brought back DC and Marvel from the brink, or that Star Wars was never brought back from the brink or death, or no TV show had ever been made into a movie and then continued on as a franchise. The terms franchise, I mean, this stuff we talk, Star Trek was doing multi-cinematic universes, before anybody, this is one of my other soapboxes. Star Trek invented the internet with paper and stamps before the internet was there. Yep. That's what the Well Committee was. It was, how do we get information to fans, whether you want to know about the show or you want to know about fandom or whatever you want to know about, how do we do that? And we were doing it. Nothing had ever had a passion behind it until I started to Rudy Giuliani, Rudolph Valentino or Bing Crosby or Elvis Presley or the Beatles or singers maybe, and a movie star here and there. Right. Nothing as an entity, as a thing with stars involved, sure, but as a thing existed like that before Star Trek. And the Doctor Who people go, but Doctor Who was before Star Trek. I go, yeah, but it took the Americans to show you how to market it. No one knew what it was before, Star Trek and Star Wars. Yeah. So anyway, now I'll get off my soapbox. But
now I love the soapbox.
But and today, if you talk to people who know the industry, and I've noticed this too, 'cause I came from Star Trek, but talking to people from other, they will, people who do conventions and who might even be jaded and cynical and all that, and they will say, Star Trek has the nicest fandom of all the fandoms.
Yep.
It's like, they're just the nicest. Now, if you're in a flame war with somebody arguing about, uniform rank braid hymns or something, that might not be true, but I'm kidding. But I think it's the Roddenberry vision is why
Yes,
Star Trek was what it
yes,
was, and it's the
yes.
ownership streak that people have in it both, and there is no other fandom like that.
No,
Yeah.
not to. I always steal from Mission Log. I'm like the morals and meanings of Star Trek. Sorry, Roddenberry. But it's so true because this fandom based around like what we want to be, what we want our future to be, and this constant hope and ever optimism just drive this franchise in a way no one else has that. And so I completely agree that it's Roddenberry's vision, and then it's the passion that we as fans have. I didn't start loving Star Trek until I was an adult. I didn't grow up with Star Trek. I grew up being a science fiction fan. I like to go back and look through my childhood pictures to have proof of yes, like I was a sci-fi kid. I'm from a small town in Kentucky, so it's of all the places for Star Trek to reach. My little tiny 3,000 people in my town. Star Trek wasn't something anyone watched there, and my parents were not Trekkies. My dad did watch it, but he wasn't like a big fan where he got me to watch it. So it wasn't until I was an adult that I really got into Star Trek. But it is my passion outside of my my work, my family. I've been a fan of many things, but it's just really this hope for the future, and the fact that I see that future in my friends. And so I go, I love Star Trek 365 days a year. I make this one little excursion to my Mecca every year. And there are a lot of people like me that have that same passion, that same hope for the future that is unique to Star Trek. So I can't agree with that enough, Larry.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why it doesn't turn into a tit for tat, like, like when the token, Trek versus Wars debates or something, because most people are fans of both. People have their favorite.
Yeah.
But that's so much of that is just like trumped up. Whoops, that's not a good verb. But so much of that is like ginned up or whatever. But it's, I just go, hey, do the math. There's 747 something hours of Star Trek, and there's 20 of Star. But yeah, it is. And what you said though about being a kid, I love the interview when JJ was on Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and I keep that little panel as a meme that I pop in. Yeah. When he said something, when I was a kid, I didn't understand Star Trek. It was just so philosophical, and all my friends wanted. But he basically says that it's like when you're a kid, it's easy to grab on to Star Wars than Star Trek, and sometimes you do have to grow, even though tons of kids were Trek fans when they were little kids, much less, teenagers. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up with it. Yeah.
And I'm so envious of people that did grow up with it, because I wish I could have been 4 years old and watching it and having all my life. And I didn't, the first series that I watched on television was Enterprise. I watched some of Voyager. Like, I hate to talk about this stuff, guys, because other people sometimes do look down on like these new fans, and true. It's a really sad thing. And so I'm like, oh God, people are going to judge me because I didn't love Star Trek when I was 12. No. I remember watching Voyager.
Well, I would just go to those people and yell "idic" at them and shut that down.
I do, because my belief is that everyone who loves Star Trek or who even likes Star Trek is a fan. So it doesn't matter what age you were or when or how, just that you love Star Trek. But, I remember watching Star Trek, and it was episodes that were bad episodes. And I was like, wow, this is kind of campy. This was Voyager specifically. Sorry, Voyager lovers. But, I just remember, like, I couldn't get into it, even though, I just loved all this other science fiction. And I was like, why? I don't know. Like, I wish I had a good answer besides I did not have family.
Late Voyager or early on, or what?
I think it had to have been early. I just remember it was one of those episodes where I think it had to be early Voyager, because a lot of it is very it's just very acted. It's not well written. I say it's very acted. I guess what I mean is, to me, it reads as if they're just saying their lines in some episodes. And, here I had a female captain and I should have been like, oh my gosh, look. And it just did not resonate with me for some reason. And I'm just like, oh, why not? Like, why?
And so then you gave Enterprise a try when it came out, or?
Yeah. So, well, it was my ex-husband at the time. He was raised in a Star Trek family. His mom was a Trekkie. So he wanted to watch it. Well, actually, the first movie I saw in the theater was Nemesis. So even though there's all this Nemesis hate, I have a special place for that film in my heart because it was the first one I saw in the theater. But yeah, so we watched Enterprise, and I made it through, like, up until it gets really awesome, like, third season. I think when it starts to get super great, for some reason I wound up losing interest. But we had lived in Florida. We moved out to Colorado, and the JJ movies came out, and I was like, okay, well, let's go see that one. I loved it. I thought it was a great film. And given I wasn't a huge Trekkie at the time, but as someone who liked Star Trek, didn't know a ton of the history, I thought it was a really good movie. So we're just like, let's try to find a Comic-Con. Let's see if we can find somewhere to go. And, Google led us to STLV, and I went, and it was a very different experience because it was, me and my ex-husband, and we were mostly kept to ourselves, made some friends, met Leonard Nimoy.
This is so hard to envision now, but yeah.
It's, we met Leonard Nimoy. I met Zachary Quinto, so I met new people, and I met Leonard Nimoy. Best, just one of the most memorable moments of my life. Even though, guys, I was not as in love with Leonard Nimoy as I am now, meeting him was still that monumental that it is one of the best moments of my life. He's so awesome. But anyway, I could tell that convention was just special. Like, I could look at the people and see that there were friends here and people that maybe came every year. Like, you could see the little family elements. And so kept coming back, and got divorced eventually, and came back by myself and told him not to come because it's my territory. and I've come every year since. So I don't know what else to say.
I think you've said it all.
I think
but getting that, sharing that out. I mean, it's not like I don't want to go out and evangelize. I just want to make sure that part of what I do with everything I've done, I didn't sit down and think all this out, but my background is theater and entertainment, and my background is news and journalism, and then I'm a fan, and I have way too many interests all over the place. I love history. I was a NASA kid before I was you talk about the original series and Star Trek, and being grounded in real science as much as it can be, and the mutual love affair with NASA that's been there since day one, and goes on today. And all those things are all part of why Trek is different than all other fandoms things too, which we've, gone through. But, that's me. And as time went on, I just was a huge, background fan, both in canon and how the shows were made. And so everything and I love the stories and the characters and the actors, and those 79 shows over and over again for, 10, 15 years, 20 years, because I was a rerun kid. But, and then Next Generation, and they were able to latch on eventually, wobbly, but you were so starved, even though you had the movies, but you wanted more. And it's a lot like where we are now. But I just realized that was it. And without thinking about it, when, my instincts, the people that did fan fiction out of the gate, because that's how they wanted more Star Trek, and they weren't getting it. So what are they going to do for themselves? They're going to write stories. And my thing was, I want to get this damn thing organized. And I would start doing, gap filling and background stuff. And then, well, why did you do this and not this? And I would, eventually get to be able to talk to people. So when I got the keys to do things like the Next Gen Companion and edit Communicator for 8 years, whatever it was, 7, 8 years, and work on the fact files and everything I've wanted to do. And then everything under Trekland that I've done since then, when I do interviews or write or what I do with Portal 47 now, which is really kind of the ultimate, backstage pass thing for indulging mind. I mean, my first convention I thought I took all my background Star Trek books, because I thought when I went to a convention, we'd all sit around and talk background. I took my blueprints, my tech manual, my concordance, uh, a lot of magazine. I had Trek magazine and some different things and Starlog and the giant poster books and all that stuff. And I went in, boy, am I dating myself. And I went in, this is like in college, and I went, oh, no, it's not people sitting around in groups talking background. It's people watching movies and people dressing up, and which I wanted to do too, but
Yeah.
so I went, oh, and that was my like quick education. And within 2 or 3 years, I'm like, okay, we're all fans, but I'm not like every fan, you know. So with Portal 47, I say, it's not for everybody, but if you're a background fan and you want to know, take a deeper dive, as we say. That's what
Yeah.
that was. When you were talking about the women and like the Women at War panel, thanks to Mark Cushman, I'll give him credit. I had no idea she was still around, but Andrea Kincaid, who was Gene Coon's assistant,
Right. Yep.
she is still around. She lives in Australia, and we had her as a guest one month on our telebriefings.
That's
And oh my God, I mean, but that's like first person. That's another like example of first person history. And those are people. And even if they're from Next Gen and Voyager and DS9, which by the way, the years are going by on those shows too now.
yeah.
As far as preserve your history, guys.
Yeah.
But to hear anybody who will say, I mean, and I can do this with late Next Generation onward, I can say Michael and Jerry and Rick, and because I knew them and worked with them or interviewed them, or combination of all these things. But to have people to say, well, when Bob came in and was talking to Gene, and Gene came in, and Dorothy was there, and then Bill came over and they were arguing about this, but or something, and people who will talk about all those people in first name basis because they were there and knew them.
Yeah.
That's one of the things now that I also try to bring to myself and people, and getting it on film, getting it recorded, and if we can get it into a live experience, either over the internet somehow, or at a live event even. That's just like magical, because I feel like that's the best thing we can do for people, whether they've been a fan for 20 years or 2 months.
I agree. I think part of my personal evolution as a Star Trek fan has been to really dive in and to read all these books about the history of Star Trek, how it was made, what went into this, what went into that, listening to podcasts, which are just I'm so grateful that we have podcasts and these interviews, because people over at Saturday Morning Trek, Aaron Harvey, he's done some really amazing interviews. Yours was one of them that I listened to a few weeks ago, and just
that's right. Yeah.
getting, I just find it fascinating. And I know that Jeff is a big fan of Mark Cushman's Voyages.
Oh yes,
books.
These are the Voyages. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had him on a few times, and so I know like Jeff really likes reading about those because they're so extremely detailed with a lot of the background info. It's so important, and that's just another reason why Star Trek is so great. Is you can watch all the episodes, but then there's so much more to learn. I wanted when we had the Harlan Ellison book on
Skyboat Media folks.
Yeah, exactly, and got to listen to that. And I mean, my mind was blown just by learning the history involved in City on the Edge. That's just, I think most Star Trek fans kind of know what happened on a base level. I mean, some are oblivious, but I think a lot of people that know general Star Trek history know kind of what went on there. But
I think 70s, 80s fans know, because that was what there was and they were closer to it.
Yeah.
And then the further we've gotten away from that, people kind of know, oh, if they know anything, they go, oh, well, Harlan won an award for his script, and then the show won an award won a Hugo for the way it was, aired. And and they fought at the beginning, and he never wrote again for Trek, and Harlan's Harlan. And but he's gotten older, and people have migrated away from mainstream, sci-fi fandom, and don't know what a crazy, wild, creative, crazy guy Harlan Ellison was.
He was so popular when I think he was there, like 2 years ago?
2 years ago, yep.
At STLV, and I think he was on stage twice, and that's like all I heard about those days was him on stage. So
well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's as it ought to have been because
Yes.
he, again, I don't want to be morbid, but these people are not going to be with us forever, as we have
No.
learned all too well the last few years, you
Yeah,
know?
we hoped he would have been there last year, but no, he's not in great health, and
Yeah.
we're lucky to have had the people that we've had at the conventions. I Grace Lee Whitney is one that comes to mind just because I read
Mm-hmm.
her autobiography recently, and again, I really did not know a whole lot about her, and then I read the autobiography, and I was just like, wow, like why did I never go up and have a chat with her? Like I regret that now because
Yes.
I
Yes.
really I admire her. I admire what she went through as a woman. I admire, she didn't have, she was an alcoholic, and she admits to that and talks about going through recovery and just very real and honest. And that connects with everyone. We're
Mm-hmm.
all people, we're all human beings. And she's gone. And I regret that. And so it's just so important to have those people there. Even for people in their 20s. I mean, all of us can at least pass down these memories of having everyone, but it's just like we say with our grandparents, get it on video, talk to them, get the story out there, since we have that technology now.
Yeah. Well, another one of my soapboxes, especially the last couple of years with the 50th coming, is talk to the first generation fandom about that.
Yes.
And everybody's got local fan history in their city. And the other thing that I try to get over without seeming, well, not like get off my lawn, kids, but I mean, without seeming too crazy about it, is preserving stuff from fandom for younger kids, because everybody is running around in the DC Marvel Uber world, Big Bang
Yeah.
Theory's #1 show. We didn't think about it. I didn't think about running around being a fan in the closet, in the old days. You just kind of kept it to yourself. You found out it wasn't worth it talking to anybody else. I didn't have any outright abuse. I guess there are a lot of people that, if you watch Free Enterprise, and see what Robert and Mark have their Kirk fan, portrayed as. They're getting beat up for wearing his Kirk shirt to school in
Yeah.
the 70s or whatever, the 80s. I didn't have that. I was just kind of kept to myself, but I knew we would find friends who we could share that with. But the world is so different now. I mean, to me, on a practical level, it was when we were first doing conventions and you had to beg, borrow, and steal to get any news, much less TV coverage of your convention,
Yeah.
anything you were trying to do. And now, much less get respect from anybody, hotels, event people. And now, thanks to the Comic-Con madness, everybody and their dog is seeing dollar signs. And they want, they're courting. Cities
Yeah.
and chambers of commerce are courting people to come in. Oh, yes, please come right this way. How many people are going to bring in hotel rooms and food and, all the economic impact of it. And that's just
Yeah.
hysterical to me, considering we were like fighting and clawing to get not just respect, but to get any attention. Oh, look, we got 3 paragraphs in the paper. Woohoo, about our, our 2,000 person convention,
Yeah.
But that's it. But the thing is that like younger fans don't, and I feel like I'm some like old black civil rights activist trying to talk to kids about what the 50s were like and the 40s. But it's anything that's easy now because people did something to get it off the ground, whether it was a life and death issue or it was recreation or whatever it was. That's a story that's told, and no matter what it is, it's not just about we had to be tough fans back then. You guys have it easy. It's all in your phone. Not so much that, but just being aware.
Sorry, I was going to say, Larry, you're absolutely right. And yeah, you just brought something into my mind that I just wanted to throw out there real quick about things that are easy today versus things that were, much more difficult back. And something that my uncle gave me a while back that really kind of hit home for me about how much easier it is to be a fan of just about anything today is he gave me these, and I had never seen these before. I'm sure you've seen them. I'm sure you have them, but he gave me these old Lincoln Enterprises Star Trek catalogs from the mid to late 60s. And these were you had to send away for these. They actually have my uncle's address on them. You had to send away for these, and they were catalogs of Star Trek merchandise that you could order. You couldn't just go on your phone or on the computer and onto a website and order Star Trek stuff. This was how you had to get stuff back then. You had to write a letter and send away for these things, and they would mail you, and they're literally typed on a typewriter.
Just remember, for everybody, you couldn't order anything on your phone.
No, of course. I mean, I'm trying to put it
Yeah.
in terms that people, the younger people
Right.
today would understand. I hate to
Right.
say younger people today would understand, but I mean, I have them in my hand right now, and it's literally written on a typewriter. It's in black and white, and it's obviously photocopied, and you could get scripts and stickers and portraits. I also should scan some of these and put them on the website for people to see, because if you haven't seen these are a real time capsule. And it just goes to show you, I mean, we take it for granted, nowadays how easy it is. But, back then, being a fan of this stuff, you had to be much more dedicated.
It was a lot more than just tweeting angry
Yeah.
tweets.
Although, yeah. Well, and then see, there was a zine that started, zine being like on Dead Tree Media, that was mailed with postage stamps. Among the fiction zines and the non, which were the vast majority, and then there were some nonfiction zines, not near enough, but there were some. But there was a woman, and I tried to interview her, and she's like, "Oh, come on, no one cares about this anymore." And I so would like to get her on the record. We tried to get her in that series I mentioned back 10 years ago. Terry Meyer, she used to live in Kansas City. And for, 15 years, she did a digest size, as in take a piece of typing, a copy paper and do it in half. She did a zine called Interstat, and it was a letter zine, or a LOC zine, LOC meaning letter of comment zine. And basically the forerunner of your message boards and your Facebook threads and your Twitter, conversations. Basically, it was paper. She did it every month. People started off and they would write letters about whatever was, and this was started in the 80s. So there were just the movies going by, and people would still talk about the original series, and that's all there was. But she had some columnists that would write humor. She had a woman named Dixie Owen who would clip things out of the trades so that people around the country could see what was happening in the industry. And that was my first taste of tradees, like ankles, so-and-so, or, so-and-so, Pix, Boffo box office. And she had a few, and they had cartoonists, and it was always cover art. But the 95% of it was people would write letters and debate stuff. And it would just start off a little bit like we do now. We tag people in Facebook, but people would write something and then they would answer people. It was almost like, Dorothy Parker and the Algonquin or something. It was like this round table of people talking back and forth. And it was 3/4 to 7/8 women.
Yeah.
And it was mostly, they would be talking about stories and characters. And there were some, pre-Flame Wars and pre-Snark Fests. There was some really bitching stuff back and forth. And there were 2 or 3 people who were really just, horrible, really prickly characters. And their stuff would just be like dripping, and people would get into arguments back and forth. And then some of us would read this and go, I don't really care. Can I just ask why we don't have more Andorians and Tellarites in the movies? Can I just ask that? That's all I care. I'm fine with Spock. I'm okay. But anyway, but that's it. So like once a month, and Terry would get these letters from people until she cut off. So there would be like 20 or 30, and she would hand retype everybody's into a font, and it was pasted up. She would do it on her IBM Selectric, and she's got it, and then it would shoot down, and it would be 20, 30, 40 pages, and you would subscribe, and then people would send extra money for postage. And she would try to have news events, but Harv Bennett went to her when he was trying to take over. When he will tell this story, you can find it in the record. When he got given Star Trek II, and he didn't know what in the hell to do, and he sat down. He started looking. You couldn't just sit down and, Google this.
Right.
He had to look around and see. And one of the people he saw was Terry. So he called her and said, I've got this opportunity. What do you think I should do? And she said, well, have you seen the original series? And he's like, well, not really. And she's like, well, you're at Paramount. Why don't you sit down and watch it? So he, and it wasn't on tape or DVDs or streaming. So he went in the screening room and watched almost all the original series. And when, he decided, oh my God, what a perfect idea for a sequel. But he would put things in, and the publicity person at Paramount then was a guy named Eddie Egan, and they developed that, and they would come and not tease stuff, but they would like get their opinions from people reading what people were writing back and forth. But this thing came on paper once a month, like you would get exhausted writing your 2-page letter, talking back to people, answering points or bringing up a new point, and then people would answer you. And that went on for 15 years. And of course, the internet made it obsolete after a while. But it was just that's what people were inventing a message board, and because and letter to letter was just not enough. We had to have like a grid. We needed point to point to point. Back and forth letters weren't enough anymore. And I just remember being exhausted because I would put all this effort into writing my letter and answering people back and raising some points of my own. And then I feel like I just didn't. Oh my God! Here's the new interstat. Now I've got to start all over.
Do another one.
which is hysterical to me now because we burn so much energy. How much? How old do last week's tweets look?
Really.
Anyway, really but again, that was another case of I say Star Trek invented the internet with paper and stamps, but that's what I mean. Nothing like that had existed before, and people had done newsletters as a fan club, but that was taking it to a whole different, of which there were a lot, but that was taking it to a whole different level.
Yeah. I think Bijo talked a lot about the letter writing campaigns and just some other stuff. I think, selling the first Star Trek merchandise and all that. And I can't remember, it might've been the Women at Warp interview that they did with her where she was talking about that. And it was just, very similar story and just, the technology that we didn't have and the fact that, people went to these conventions like you would go to Facebook. You had to go physically to this convention just to see other Star Trek fans, forget about really keeping in touch with people. Some would send letters back and forth and be pen pals, but a lot of times you would see these people, talk to them, and then the next year you go.
Yeah. Well, see, that's interesting because and your world would explode because you would be stuck in your little world, whether it was New York or Oklahoma or Kentucky or wherever you were, and think, well, and then you'd get to college and maybe you would, oh my God, I found 8 more people like me, and we've got a club now or something, but. Honey, that's what the thunderclap of the first Trek convention in New York was about. They thought they'd have 500 and they got 3,000, and people were like, "Oh my God, who knew?" And it took the fandom to make the guys who needed money to bring Star Trek back. And when the Tech Manual was the number one book, the number one nonfiction on New York Times for 16 weeks, that's when people went, "Oh my God, it's not just these goofy kids running around with pointed ears. There's money to be made here." And so that means respect. And then, it's all off and running from there. But I think it's Bijo that said when they were first starting Lincoln Enterprises, roddenberry.com now, they would sell it if it was flat.
Yeah.
But she had some funny little phrase for that.
Yes.
If we could stick it in a flat envelope and mail it, then we would. So everything had to be, flat like that. But
Yeah, I remember her mentioning that in that interview specifically.
Well, hey, Larry, getting back around to the convention, are you going to be doing your table in the vendor's room again this year?
Well, that's the plan. I'm not sure exactly what program type things are going on. We've got the tour, and I have a couple of things that are going to be new that I can't talk about yet because they're hopefully going to happen here by June or so. But I'll be there. I mean, the first years we went because we were covering it for Communicator and all the I covered them, and then we had the fan club table and we Communicator and all of that, and then StarTrek.com we started doing events, and then when all of that blew up and StarTrek.com was shut down for 4 years on the old model, and I told Adam and Gary that I would come in and do the kind of the trivia thing that we used to do, we had done for a while, and so I did that, and then ever since then we've just had a thing where they have given me a table and I'll do some panels and programming or whatever. And then, since I started working on the Con of Wrath, like I do anywhere I go, I have my live 2-hour meetup. This may be the last year because we're trying to get Con of Wrath wrapped up this year, my documentary, where I do a 2-hour show at night where people it's a crowdfunder. They can do their $20 for a screen credit or more, but we also make an event out of it. So I have rare Trek video, and I have that you won't see anywhere else. And I have sneak peeks from, George and Walter and Harv Bennett, the late great Harv Bennett, and Nichelle and Wendy Doohan, Jimmy's widow, and people from that. And then we do some trivia and prizes. So that's kind of an event. And it's the Vegas keeps evolving, and it's not as simple on some levels as it was. And, CBS has gotten much more involved. That's the other end of the Comic-Conification,
Yeah.
which is good. I mean, on one hand, building up, we get snarky and we get, anti-purist or purist about it maybe. And people will say, oh, I remember the old days when you could buy anything in dealer's room and people would hand make stuff and sell it. And, they've come in with licensing to protect that. And some people decry that and miss the old days. But on the other hand, we sit and moan about how you walk in your Target and Walmart and here's all the Star Wars stuff. Where's the Star Trek action figures, and there's building blocks behind all of that kind of thing. And so, kudos to John and Bill and everybody at CBS for taking more active role on the panels and getting more of the licensees to come in and talk about their products on the panels, as well as the authors. And we have, STO and all kinds of things to lend that to and Rod and everything with rodandberry.com. So, so anyway, it's gotten more sophisticated and complex that way, but I will be there, probably with more than one hat on for sure.
As always.
Like I said, it's I mean, now it's like this battle scarred thing when people say, "Are you going to be at Vegas?" I go, "I've been to every one," but it's like, oh, well, they've only been around for 2 or 3, 4 years, so it's not that big a deal. But I've always been there either to cover them or booth, table, or represent or whatever. So every once in a while, I'll put a throwback. I did for George's birthday. I did a throwback Thursday and George Takei's birthday when I was in my McCoy dress uniform and like the first convention I saw him at where he's signing. It wasn't even a photo. He was signing like an article in Enterprise Incidents or Trek magazine or something. But yeah, I have all that. I have all that cred back there. But that's why the moments when I have a little fanboy moment anymore. I mean, I enjoy all of this, and if it wasn't some passion still in it, it wouldn't be fun at all. But I feel like I've got these missions to do now, and like, what's my skills and gifts, and so everything from editing the magazines and writing the books to doing Portal 47 and doing Con of Wrath documentary and all of that. It's kind of down this thing, and like everything we've talked about here so far is kind of reflecting what I hope that I can take my years in the fire and pass it on, or flag people and say, hey, go see this person, or let's get this person out here, guys. Woo! I know you just jumped in the boat, but don't let this go by. You will be able to do this in 5 years, kind of stuff. So,
well, I know you have a lot of fans yourself, Larry, and a lot of people hear that. So I think so far you're succeeding.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's been very gratifying with the portal, even though it's kind of a closed community. I've set it up as a business, but hopefully a very valued, win-win for everybody. And, but when I have people say, oh my God, I had no idea, or oh my God, that's a great story, or oh my God, I had no idea this existed. That's kind of, because I fall into a trap sometimes. So I'll see something go by and I'll go, oh, this is news. And then I went, oh wait, Larry, that was like from 99 and it's been, or that was from 2005, or that was, much less like the 80s or something. And oh, okay, there's lots of, so, and in fact, this is something I meant to say a while ago. One of the things I wanted to do last year, and maybe I'll save it for this year in some way, venue at Vegas, you talked about the newer fans and them having respect. And one thing I was kidding when I said idic, I would have yelled. But that's one thing that we have to remember is that my eyes were opened that first year when I saw how many JJ fans were there and soaking it up, and they'd found their way there. And we're diving back into all, and it was easier and easier every year to do that, to dive back into all the existing series and all the prime canon, but to not disrespect those people, because even though I had one guy at Phoenix Comic-Con, one guy at the back of the room go, yeah, I came to fandom through the JJ movies, and then I watched everything else, and now I hate the JJ movies. but that was people all come to a different place, but everybody, I always say, everybody always has their first. You always love your first, right? You never forget your first. Whatever meaning you want to attach to that. And Star Trek is that way. And you were talking about enjoying, you couldn't get into Voyager, but Enterprise you feel like is your first, but it was like the last first run that you got to, the only one that you got to see. And people wherever they came, and I always do a hands up poll at the beginning of all my talks if I can, about this, just to see where the room is. And sometimes judging by the convention or the event, it's very easy to see, where the generations are. But I want to do a thing sometime I wanted to call it just for JJs and talk to JJ fans to see, Are they just JJ movie fan? If they see, the other thing is a lot of times we look at a convention audience, a Trek convention, even a totally all Trek convention audience, and assume that's all fandom. And it's not. That's the people who either have the money or the time or the knowledge to get to it, right? There's tons of what I always call armchair fans sitting out there watching themselves. They're maybe they read books and comics, or they buy an action figure, or they're married, maybe they have kids, they're showing it to their kids, and they're not going to conventions, but they're still fans, and they're like the great people would love to hear from them. I know CBS would love to hear from them. But they're buying products, and they're enjoying Star Trek in their own circles in their own way, and either they don't know or they don't care or whatever. And a lot of those people I would talk to people who were. I talked to one guy. I told this story before somewhere. Last year. No, it was 2015 even. He was a guy in his 50s, 60s. Had a gray grizzled beard, whatever, and a nice guy. And I said, "Wow, are you just now a fan?" He goes, No, I've been a fan since the 60s. I watched NBC. And I said, "Oh, so how many is this your first Vegas?" And he goes, "This is my first convention, period."
Mm.
And I said, "Wow, what happened?" He said, it was Leonard's passing.
Yeah.
It's like, I've been a fan for 49 years, and it took Leonard. It's like, my God, they're not all going to be around much longer. I need to go to conventions and see what this is. So, there's those kind of stories and experiences I just love. But back to the JJ kids, I would just love to get them do a talk show kind of thing or a forum kind of thing and ask them, how much other have they explored? Do they still enjoy the JJ's first? What do they feel from the main? Do they feel like they're this offshoot branch that's not getting respected? Do they even feel like they have an identity separate from? I would love to talk to them, because I feel like for a while I was worried about this. Now with Discovery coming, and I think there's so much, just everything, not chaos, but there's so many threads going right now. I don't know that it's so much this, but I would love to talk to them to see if they feel like they've been maligned or forgotten about or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so many of them are younger. I don't even know if they've found their way to conventions, because you have to be old enough to be able to, unless you're a kid with parents who's going, you have to be old enough to have a job, or have inherited your family fortune, but you have to be old enough to have a job, to be mobile enough to go to Vegas or go to a major convention. So
Yeah, I think the only person I think of off the top of my head is our friend Gerardo, who got into Star Trek because of the JJ movies, and then really delved into all of Star Trek, and has made his way to the convention, and he would be a great person for you to talk to. So we might make that happen in Vegas, but it's a really interesting subject. And I would totally listen, or watch a panel.
Yeah.
Talking to
I would love to talk to either a panel or me on stage, and just have people from the audience talk from the audience and talk back and forth, because I love those because the one thing I never want to do, and the thing that I always love, kind of like I kind of smile when it happens, is catch myself in a rut, because I think we all do that, and I think the younger fans do more because they haven't been through too many rut cycles. I just invented that, but you know what I mean? It's like, don't assume that, and I don't mean don't assume that you know everything, but don't assume that because this is the way it's always felt. This is like, we have these it's like I always say that people always look at the news, whatever the next series is going to be, they always bring the baggage from the last series, and they don't realize that it would be different people, a different era. 10 years of the world have gone by, 10 years of, or whatever it's been, 20 years have gone by, 10 years have gone, and they always bring the old into the new with that filter. Until it's like, no guys, look, they're gonna write the stories like this. It's gonna be 13 episodes. No guys, this is gonna be a movie only frame. It's Kirk, Spock, McCoy, but these are movie actors.
Yeah,
they're not promoting a series to get renewed. They'll promote this in all the movie ways, and then they'll go off to another movie, and the last thing they're gonna do is go to a million conventions, because they don't want to look old and decrepit, like they don't have a career anymore. Because that's what movie people think until they're retired, unless they're doing it for a good reason or a personal reason, or they're very, very comfortable in their skin about it. But you know what I'm saying? It's like and that's what also the last 10 years or so, I guess I've found that I can help calm the waters, or maybe connect dots for people that may not have thought to connect those dots before. But anyway, anytime I can kick myself out of a rut, that's it. And a year or so ago, I started wondering if those JJ fans are out there. Are they even a thing yet to even be insulted or feel ignored yet? But I was just curious about it. So yeah, I would love to do that sometime.
Yeah.
And see. And heaven knows what's going to happen. If Discovery is, hot stuff, or if it's or if it brings down the Les Moonves administration at CBS, or what happens with it. There will be a reaction, and there'll be, fandom will be in a way about it one way or the other. So hopefully it'll all be awesome, and and all that.
That's my hope. I just try to be optimistic.
Yep, me too. Yep. Yeah. So, Larry, now we're getting kind of close to the end of our time together this time, but I'm sure you'll be back again. But I want to just quickly mention the Geek Nation tour again as we're getting towards the end here. So, geeknationtours.com, LarryNemecek.com. The tour leaves from the Rio Hotel on August 1st, and as Larry said, seats are limited. So if you are interested in this tour, jump on it and get out there and get your ticket as soon as possible. How fast does this thing usually sell out, Larry?
We've never had a sellout, but it's the last couple of years it's gotten close to that. Actually, I take that back. Last year, the years we have the big tour, all the people on the tour already, it's part of their big tour, and then we have the one-day people. And last year, I think we were sold out. So I don't know if it'll happen that close, but it's a good bet if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. And tickets are on sale now, right? So we can go out and immediately purchase them.
Totally, yes.
Excellent. And how about, I know you briefly mentioned Portal 47. Let's get a little bit more information about that out there in case anybody who's listening to this isn't familiar and doesn't know what they can get from Portal 47.
Well, Portal 47, I hope everybody knows the 47 of Star Trek. It actually didn't start with Star Trek, but Joe Menosky brought it to Star Trek from Pomona College. But 47 is the most common random number in the universe. And thanks to Joe and it being very infectious, it spread to all parts of Star Trek over the years. There's 47s in dialogue and graphics, including the JJ movies, all through Star Trek. But so when I had years of, especially when we were wandering in the wilderness here after Enterprise went down and everything kind of blew up, and I didn't know whether to keep going with Star Trek in myself or not. And I had people say, no, you know too many people, and you have too much stuff, and you have too much stuff in your head. You should do something with that. And the world is going to entrepreneurs and all that. So it took a while to get my bearings, but Portal 47 is kind of A, my way of putting all that together, and B, what I've been talking about here, sharing and maybe looking at things in a different way and connecting dots. And most of all, we talk about the deep divers, just when you're ready to go to a deeper level of Star Trek and more insight and more, not just trivia factoids, but just getting a vibe for how do TV shows and movies, how are they put together? How was Trek put together? Who are the people behind the names? What's some cool stuff you're not going to see on a convention stage or even in a magazine or even on a podcast. And a lot of the people from the Rolodex of Star Trek that I knew, bringing them out. And so Portal 47 is this monthly package every month. We say it's your insider access to more in-depth Trek, and we go where no savvy fan has gone before, like a mini con all year long, no matter where you are. You mentioned growing up in Kentucky, one of my biggest booster members now. He's not going to be going to a big convention anytime soon. He's in Eastern Kentucky, and Brandon is awesome about helping me. He promotes all the time online, but so just the other day, somebody was thanking me for something that, like, we have a members only Facebook page, and they were talking about something kind of controversial. And somebody said, Larry, thanks for having this space. I feel like I know everybody in the portal, and I would never talk about this even on a Trek board out in the open this way. Well, I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, nice thing. So there's 8 features every month. It's $27 a month. It's the cost of 2 movie tickets a month, and there's 8 pieces, and the highlights are the 2 telebriefings we have, once with me and one with a guest, and the recordings, you get the recordings, and there's all kinds of other pieces. So portal47.net.
So one thing I also want to ask you about really quick before we close up, and that we've had a lot of interest after Bonnie's episode aired not long ago. We had a lot of people on our unofficial Facebook group asking questions about the Con of Wrath, and we wanted to know if you would be willing to come back. I know you're doing a documentary on it, but if you'd be willing to come back and give us some interesting tidbits about it, maybe answer some questions from our community about.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Awesome. If you have specific questions, that would keep me from rambling. So sure. Yeah. Well, Actually, maybe not, but if you have some really strong guardrails, maybe. So yeah.
All right. So, well, we talked a lot about Larry and where people can find all of your various things online. But why don't we get one quick rundown again of where people can find all things Larry Nemecek on the internet?
Right. Well, LarryNemecek.com is a good one, and my site we just refurbished it like right at the holidays, so it's all brand new and sparkly. So everything is there, but there is a portal47.net. You can go right to there, and there's a conofwrath.com page, and then my Facebook is Larry Nemecek's Trekland, and there's a Facebook page for Con of Wrath and for Portal 47 too, and also my Trekland trunk, which is where I've got draft scripts and set plans and things and some old retail things, and I put them out. After we moved, I realized I had way too much stuff stuck back, so I'm scanning and photographing everything and then getting it into good homes. So that's the Trekland. That's just on Facebook, and it'll take it to either eBay or if sometimes we have a live event on Facebook. And then my Twitter is just at Larry Nemecek, and politics gets mixed in there too, also, as well as Sooner Football and Will Rogers. But I try to make it mostly Trek these days. And I just started an Instagram. And Instagram is Larry Nemecek's Trekland too, which is, mainly pretty pictures. But there you go.
Very cool. So lots of Larry out there on the web for you.
Oh, that's scary. I was going to say, if you've enjoyed this, then you know what you should do. You know what Portal 7 is like. If you've run screaming from the room and thrown your mobile device in the water, then maybe Portal 47 is not for you.
Well, Larry,
I'm just kidding.
Thank you as always for being on Shore Leave. We love talking to you. It's always a heck of a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to talking about the Con of Wrath here in the near future.
Okay, I do. And you guys, this is so cool to have a convention. I mean, you've found a good niche to fall into here. There was a need, and not only the here and now, but getting people like Bonnie, and you should dig around and find some of those.
Yeah.
If you could find some of those original New York convention people, they're out there. I've talked to a couple of them the last couple of years.
I might enlist your help a little, but yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get Bijo as soon as we can get her Skype set up, because I'd love to hear from her too. So awesome.
We have Steve Lance also lined up, who's AKA Heesh, the host from the early New York convention. So he'll be around.
Blew me away.
Yeah.
I did not know any of the history to that, but I had the little 45 record that he did his comedy thing on, because how much stuff could you find that was Star Trek on, recorded then?
Yeah.
And when I read that, I went, oh my God, this is the Heesh guy. I have to dig that out. Yeah. I hope I still have it.
Phenomenal. So he'll be around. Maybe we can get you guys on the same time. So
that would be scary. The Okie and the New Yorker. That would be scary.
So guys, keep your eyes out for that. So as we're closing up, Heather Barker, where can people find you online?
I have a new Twitter handle. I am LLA on Twitter and on Instagram. And then I admin the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas convention group on Facebook. And you can find me there. And what about you, Jeff?
Oh, I'm also at that same unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas Facebook page, but it's been a Twitter revolution. I think everybody's changed their Twitter names, and the show has actually changed its Twitter name. So I am now Warp Factor Jeff on Twitter. That's my personal Twitter, but you can also find us at Tricorder Show on Twitter, as well as at Shore Leave, as always, and our brand new show, Trek Ranks, which just debuted last week. That's also at Trek Ranks on Twitter, and we're also on Facebook at the Tricorder Transmissions, as well as our own website, the tricordertransmissions.com. So tons and tons of ways. We don't have an Instagram yet. I guess we should probably get one of those. Yeah, we don't have one. We also have a YouTube channel and all kinds of stuff you can get to from our actual website. So feel free to visit that anytime. And well, I guess we'll be back in the very near future. We have a lot more stuff planned for Shore Leave between now and the Star Trek Las Vegas convention. I think we have many more episodes planned than there are months between now and the convention. I think we've got only 3 months to go, but I think we have at least 5 episodes worth of content that's going to be coming out.
Can't you just emit an inverse tachyon pulse through the main deflector and squeeze them all in or something?
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to do that. But I think we're gonna have our vendor room episodes coming up here in the near future as we're getting close. So all of our friends are going to be coming back to do the vendor stuff, and more cons of your stuff. And I mean, Heather's got a great roadmap planned out for all of you guys. So
Yeah.
keep your eyes.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds incredible.
All right. Well,
Yeah. 100 days. Excuse me.
We'll be there
98 days. Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, we'll all be together. And Larry, we're going to do a live shore leave recording at the convention. So we'd love to get some time with you as well, if you can squeeze us in.
I would definitely love to. Oh, you know what? I should say real quick that I'm coming up. I don't have any Memorial Day cons planned, but I will be at SoonerCon in Oklahoma City back home, and at Comic-Con at San Diego Comic-Con in some way, if nothing else, at least an autograph table for a couple of days, and the Modesto Comic-Con in Modesto in July before San Diego. So that's coming up quickly. And then I'm doing the library tour in Michigan again around Detroit in mid-August. So that's happening too. So if anybody's out in the hinterlands, out and about, then Modesto Con is July 7th to 9th, like 2 weeks ahead of San Diego. And SoonerCon in Oklahoma City is June 23rd, 25th. So there you go, for anybody's out that way and didn't know already.
Excellent.
And of course, Vegas. STLB. Anyway, thanks again, guys.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here. Hi there. Thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.